Daniel had never seen anyone like her. She always sat alone in the academy garden, a silver cloak wrapped tightly around her small frame, her long hair shimmering like starlight under the blue suns. Most students avoided her. Some whispered things he didn't understand. Others stared, then laughed when she ignored them. But Daniel was new too, and he understood what it was like to feel out of place. Her name was Lyra. She was part of the Vanyari, a species humans didn't know much about except that they were smart, graceful, and a little strange. Humans found them mysterious. Daniel didn't care about strange. He was curious. He first noticed her when she dropped her data pad under the garden bench. As he bent to pick it up, she yanked it away quickly, her cheeks pink, her eyes wide and wary. "Thank you," she whispered, voice soft like wind through leaves. Daniel smiled. "I saw it fall. No problem." She said nothing else, just pulled her cloak tighter around herself and walked away. Something about the way she moved made him want to follow. The next day, he found her sitting in the same spot. This time, he brought 2 cups of synth coffee, hoping she might want company. He set one down beside her. "You don't have to talk," he said softly. "I just thought maybe you wouldn't want to drink alone." She looked at him, startled, like she didn't know how to respond. Then she nodded, accepting the cup with a trembling hand. "Thank you," she whispered again. Daniel sat beside her, careful to give her space. He didn't push her to speak. He simply watched the way her fingers wrapped around the cup, how her eyes seemed to hold entire galaxies, quiet and distant. Then, as a breeze blew, he saw it. A flicker of silver movement under her cloak, a soft, smooth shape, alive. His heart skipped. She noticed his gaze and immediately clutched the cloak tighter around her body. "Please, pretend you didn't see that," she said in a small, panicked voice. Daniel nodded, hiding his curiosity behind a calm smile. "I didn't," he said, though he had. Something told him that what she was hiding was important. Something personal, something beautiful. The days that followed, he sought her out. Sometimes they studied together. Sometimes they just sat in silence, watching the blue suns move across the sky. Lyra was quiet, careful, but Daniel learned to notice small things. The curve of her lips when she smiled, almost secretly, or the way she tilted her head when she was thinking. One evening, he found her crying behind the trees, away from the walkway where others could see. Her body shook, her shoulders trembling, and her silver hair fell over her face. "What's wrong?" he asked softly, kneeling beside her. She shook her head, trying to hide her tears. "Nothing," she whispered. "I just shouldn't be here. Why not?" Daniel pressed gently. Her voice broke, trembling with something heavier than sadness. "Because I'm not like you, my kind. We're not supposed to show what we are. Humans, they stare. They judge." Daniel frowned, realizing she was talking about the flicker of silver he had seen. "You mean your tail?" he asked, carefully, softly. Her eyes widened in shock. "You saw?" He nodded, holding her gaze. "Only for a moment." "But why hide it?" Her voice quivered. "Because it's ugly. Because humans see it and call us beasts. My mother," she said, "never show it, never." Daniel took a breath, feeling the weight of her fear. Then he reached out a hand, just hovering above hers. "Maybe your mother never met the right kind of human," he said softly, gently, without judgment. Her eyes flickered, uncertain. She looked away, pulling the cloak tighter around herself, but she didn't leave. For the first time, Daniel felt a small bridge form between them. Something fragile, delicate, like the first hint of spring after a long winter. That night, he went to sleep thinking about the silver flicker beneath her cloak, thinking about how someone could hide such a thing from the world. He didn't understand why humans feared what they didn't know, but he knew one thing for sure. Whatever she was hiding, it didn't make her less. If anything, it made her more mysterious, more alive, more real, and he decided quietly in his heart that he would be the one to show her that she didn't need to hide anymore. Days passed, and Daniel found himself drawn to Lyra more and more. She no longer ran when he approached, though she still kept her distance. Sometimes she would smile faintly at his jokes, and it made his chest ache in a way he didn't understand. There was a sadness in her eyes, a quiet fear, but also a flicker of something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or hope. One evening he followed her to the courtyard after classes. The twin moons were rising, bathing the academy in soft silver light. Lyra stood alone near the fountain, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The wind moved her cloak slightly, but she didn't notice. "Hey," Daniel said gently, keeping his voice low. "Mind if I join you?" She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "I don't mind," she said softly. He sat beside her, careful not to crowd her space. Silence stretched between them for a moment, filled only by the soft rush of water from the fountain. Then in a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke. "My people, we are not supposed to show what we have," she said, her words hesitant, almost afraid to exist. Daniel tilted his head, sensing the weight behind them. "I know," he said simply. "You mean your tail." Her eyes widened, and she pulled the cloak tighter around her as if shielding herself from the very air. How do you know?" she asked, voice trembling. "I saw it the other day," he admitted softly, "and I didn't care. I didn't want you to be afraid." For a moment she said nothing, staring at the fountain, her breathing shallow. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "It's ugly. People, humans, they don't understand. They would call me a monster." Daniel shook his head gently. "No," he said firmly. "I don't think that. I think it's beautiful." Her head snapped up. "Beautiful?" she repeated, almost laughing through her tears. "You're lying." "I'm not," he said, looking directly into her silver blue eyes. "It's part of you. How could it be anything but beautiful? Everything about you, even this, makes you who you are." She swallowed hard, looking away, her fingers nervously fidgeting with the hem of her cloak. She wanted to believe him, she really did. But years of fear and caution had taught her otherwise. Daniel reached out slowly, placing his hand near hers, not touching, just close enough to let her feel his presence. "I want you to know," he said softly, "that I don't see a monster. I see someone brave, someone alive, someone I care about." Her breath caught. The words were strange to her ears, foreign and sweet at the same time. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not her teachers, not her peers, not even her family. For the first time, she let herself tremble, just a little. Her tail, hidden beneath her cloak, twitched involuntarily. She felt something she hadn't felt in years, trust. I've always hidden it," she admitted finally, her voice breaking, "because I was afraid. Afraid of what people would say. Afraid of being alone." "You're not alone," Daniel said softly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Not anymore." The breeze shifted and a small portion of her tail brushed against his arm without her noticing. Daniel noticed. His heart ached with a strange, quiet wonder. He had seen a lot in his life, but nothing as graceful, as alive, as mesmerizing as that flicker of silver beneath her cloak. "You don't have to hide it from me," he said gently. "Ever." She looked at him, tears slipping down her cheeks, and for a long moment they just sat there, the twin moons above them, the wind moving gently, the water whispering secrets. Slowly, almost trembling, she unclasped her hands from her cloak as if she were testing the waters of courage. Daniel didn't move. He just waited. And in that quiet space between words, between heartbeats, she realized something new. Maybe someone could see her for who she truly was. And still, not run. The night deepened around them and the stars reflected in her wide, cautious eyes. Daniel knew this was only the beginning. Lyra was learning to trust, and he was ready to show her that what she had been hiding all her life could be something proud, something strong, something beautiful. For the first time, she imagined a future where her tale didn't have to be a secret, where she didn't have to shrink herself to fit in. And Daniel, he smiled quietly to himself, knowing that when the time came, she would see what he already knew. Her tale was not a mark of shame. It was a mark of wonder. The next evening, the academy was quiet. Most students had gone to their rooms and the corridors were empty. Daniel found Lyra standing near the edge of the garden, her silver cloak wrapped tightly around her small frame, just as it always was. Her hands clutched the fabric nervously. I want to show you something," she whispered, barely audible over the soft wind. Daniel felt his heart skip a beat. He nodded slowly. "Okay," he said softly. "I'm here. Take your time." For a moment she seemed frozen, as if the words themselves were too heavy to carry. Her eyes darted around the garden, checking to make sure no one else was watching. The twin moons above cast gentle silver light on her hair, making it shine like liquid metal. Finally, with a deep breath, she loosened the clasp of her cloak. Slowly, Hesitantly, she let it fall open. Daniel's eyes widened, not with fear but with awe. There it was, a long, elegant tail, silver with faint blue stripes that glimmered softly in the moonlight. It moved with a natural grace, curling and twisting like water flowing through air. It was beautiful, mesmerizing, unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. For a moment, Daniel said nothing. He could only stare, his chest tight with wonder. "It's ugly," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling as she tried to pull the cloak back around herself. "Humans. They will hate me if they see this. They will call me a monster." Daniel shook his head firmly. "No, you're wrong. It's not ugly. It's beautiful." She froze. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Beautiful?" she asked, her voice cracking. "I mean it," he said gently, taking a small step closer. "It's part of you. It's not something to hide. It's alive and it's amazing. You are amazing." Her lips trembled. She wanted to believe him, but years of fear and shame had left deep scars. "You're lying," she whispered. "I'm not," Daniel said softly. "Look at it. Look at yourself. It's not a flaw. It's a part of who you are, and it's beautiful because it belongs to you." Tears welled in her eyes. She had never heard words like this before, never from a human or anyone. Her tail twitched gently in the wind as if responding to his words. Slowly, hesitantly, it moved toward him, curling lightly around his wrist. Daniel smiled softly. "See? It wants to trust you. It wants to be seen, not hidden." For the first time in her life, Lyra let herself breathe. She let the cloak fall completely from her shoulders. Her tail swayed freely, no longer trapped by fear. She looked at Daniel, tears streaming down her face, and for the first time she laughed, a small, quiet laugh, full of relief and disbelief. "You really think it's beautiful?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I don't just think it," Daniel said, smiling warmly. "I know it. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Never again." Her tail flicked gently, brushing against his arm. She had never felt this level of trust with anyone before. Her whole body relaxed, and she felt a lightness she had not known in years. "Thank you," she said softly. I don't know why I waited so long to show you." Daniel shook his head. "It's not your fault. You've lived your whole life hiding a part of yourself. That takes courage. And now, you've taken the first step toward being free." The wind whispered through the garden, rustling her silver hair. Her tail shimmered, reflecting the twin moons above. It was alive, graceful, and full of light. It was beautiful. But more than that, it was hers. Daniel reached out and gently held her hand. "You don't have to hide anymore," he said softly. "Not from me, not from anyone. You're perfect, the way you are." For the first time, Lyra felt true hope. She didn't feel like a monster, she didn't feel fear, she felt accepted, seen, alive. And in that quiet moonlit garden, a human and an alien shared a moment of trust, understanding, and quiet joy. The world outside might still judge her, but here with Daniel she was free. She tucked her hand into his, her tail curling gently around them both. She whispered, "I think I'm ready now. Ready to be me." Daniel smiled, feeling the warmth of her trust. "You've always been you," he said softly. "Now everyone else just has to see it." And under the twin moons, with her silver tail swaying gently in the light, Lyra felt something she had never felt before. Beautiful, accepted, and alive. For a few days after Lyra revealed her tale to Daniel, everything felt lighter. She walked a little taller, smiled a little brighter, and even laughed softly when Daniel teased her about being the most graceful alien in the academy. But that peace did not last long. Humans were curious, and sometimes curiosity turned to whispers. Someone had seen Lyra walking with her cloak open, her silver tail glinting in the sunlight. By the next morning, the academy halls buzzed with quiet murmurs. Students stared, some in awe, others with unease. A few laughed. Some pointed. Lyra felt her stomach twist into knots every time she walked through the corridors. The cloak, once a shield, now seemed heavy and unnecessary, but she had grown used to hiding. Daniel noticed her hesitation immediately. "You don't have to go back to hiding," he said one afternoon as they sat in the empty garden. "Not from me, not from anyone." She looked down at her hands, her tail flicking nervously beneath the bench. They stare. They whisper. "I thought I could be brave, but I can't stop feeling like a freak." "You're not a freak," Daniel said, his voice steady. "You're strong. You saved yourself from hiding. That's courage, and anyone who can't see that, their problem, not yours." Despite his words, the next day brought more challenges. As Lyra walked to her classroom, a group of cadets stepped out from the hallway, blocking her path. "Well, look who it is," one of them sneered. "The alien girl with the freak tail." She froze. Her tail, normally proud and expressive, curled tightly around her leg. Fear gripped her chest, and she wanted to shrink, to vanish into herself. Daniel stepped forward instantly, placing himself between her and the group. "Back off," he said, his voice low and firm. One of the cadets shoved him lightly. "Why defend her, human? You think she's one of us?" Daniel's eyes burned, unwavering. "No. She's better." The group snickered but finally stepped aside, leaving Lyra trembling but unharmed. Daniel's presence had saved her, but the damage to her confidence lingered. She wondered if she had made a mistake showing her tail at all. That night, Lyra sat alone in her quarters, her tail curled tightly beneath the blanket. Daniel's words echoed in her mind, but it was hard to believe them. She had spent her entire life hiding, fearing judgment, fearing rejection, and now, even with someone who believed in her, the whispers of the world seemed louder than ever. The next morning, she met Daniel in the garden again, her eyes red from crying. Maybe I should just hide again," she whispered. "Maybe I don't belong here." Daniel knelt beside her, his hands brushing against hers. "Listen to me," he said softly, but with undeniable strength. "You belong here. You always have. It's not about them. It's about you. And right now you're choosing to be yourself. That's brave. That's powerful. That's beautiful." Her tail twitched lightly at his words, almost unconsciously. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to feel that strength inside herself. Slowly, hesitantly, she uncurling it a little, letting a small shimmer of silver show in the morning sunlight. "You really mean that?" she asked softly, voice trembling. "I do," he said, looking at her with unwavering certainty. "Your tail isn't a weakness. It's part of what makes you, you. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve to be part of your world." For the first time since the whispers began, Lyra felt a small spark of courage. Maybe she didn't need everyone's approval. Maybe the judgment of others didn't matter as much as the belief someone had in her. Daniel reached out and gently took her hand. "You're not alone," he said. "I'm with you, and we'll face them together." Lyra looked at him, the warmth of his words seeping into her heart. Slowly she straightened, letting her shoulders lift, letting her tail relax and sway gently behind her. She was still afraid, still nervous, but for the first time in years she felt something new. Strength. The stares and whispers might never stop completely, but Daniel had shown her something far more important, that she didn't need to hide to be accepted. And in that small moment, standing under the twin suns, she realized that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was choosing to move forward despite it. And Lyra decided, quietly but firmly, that she would not hide anymore. Not for anyone. The days after the confrontation in the corridor were tense, but Daniel and Lyra grew closer. They spent more time together, studying in the quiet corners of the academy, or walking through the gardens under the twin suns. Daniel noticed subtle changes in Lyra, Her laughter was a little freer, her shoulders not quite as tense, her silver tail moving with small, careful confidence instead of curling in fear. But Lyra still carried a weight that Daniel could see in her eyes. One evening he found her standing near the shuttle port, her small travel case beside her. The wind tugged at her cloak, and her hair shone like metal in the dying light of the suns. "I'm leaving," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper against the hum of the port. Daniel froze. "Leaving?" he asked, his heart skipping a beat. "Yes," she said, swallowing hard. "Your people. They don't want me here. I can feel it. And maybe it's safer if I go back to my homeworld." He shook his head, stepping closer. "Lyra, don't say that. You belong here as much as anyone. Anyone who says otherwise is wrong. You don't have to run." She looked down at her hands, her tail twitching nervously behind her. I've tried to be brave, but everywhere I go I feel eyes on me. They see my tail and it makes them uncomfortable. Maybe I'm just too different." Daniel knelt to meet her gaze, his eyes steady and warm. "Different doesn't mean wrong," he said softly. "It doesn't mean weak, it doesn't mean you don't belong. Lyra, your tail, your whole self, it's not a mistake, it's part of what makes you amazing." Tears welled in her eyes and she shook her head. You don't understand. If I stay, I could ruin your reputation here. People will think you favor me. You'll be in trouble too. I can't risk it." Daniel reached out, gently lifting her chin, so she looked at him. "I don't care," he said quietly but firmly. "I care about you, about us. You think I would let some whispers or rules drive you away? I won't. I can't." Her lips trembled, and for a moment, she said nothing. The wind moved, and her tail brushed against his arm. It was alive, glowing, faintly in the evening light, like a ribbon of silver and blue fire. Why are you doing this for me?" she asked, voice cracking with disbelief. "No one has ever cared like this." Daniel smiled softly, almost sadly. "Because you made me see things I forgot were possible. You made me see courage. You made me see beauty. You reminded me that being human isn't about fitting in. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. And I don't want to lose that. Not now. Not ever." Her breath hitched, and she swallowed hard, fighting the tears. Slowly, she let the cloak fall from her shoulders, letting the silver tail move freely in the breeze. Daniel's words had pierced through years of fear, of hiding, of shame. I don't know if I can stay," she whispered. "I'm still scared." Daniel held her hand firmly. "I'll be with you. Every step. You're not alone, Lyra. And you never will be while I'm here." She looked up at him, and for the first time, she saw something she had never seen before. Someone who saw all of her, even the parts she had tried so hard to hide and didn't flinch. Someone who believed in her without condition. Her tail twitched and curled gently around his wrist. The simple contact was enough to steady her racing heart. A small, fragile smile appeared on her face, and for a moment she allowed herself to hope. "Okay," she whispered softly, finally meeting his gaze fully. "I'll stay. For now. Because you believe in me." Daniel smiled, squeezing her hand. "That's all I ask. That's all I need." And in that quiet moment at the shuttle port, with the twin suns setting behind them and her silver tail wrapped carefully around his hand, Lyra realized something important. Courage wasn't about never being afraid. Courage was about choosing to face your fear, to stand tall, and to trust someone enough to let them in. And Daniel, he had shown her the truest kind of courage, the courage to believe in herself. For the first time in years, Lyra felt a warmth spreading through her chest. She wasn't alone. She wasn't a monster. She was alive. She was beautiful. And she was ready to face whatever came next, because she wasn't hiding anymore. The next morning, the academy was buzzing with an unusual urgency. Alarms blared and red lights flashed across the corridors. Daniel's heart raced as he ran toward the source of the panic. Emergency in the lower labs. Reactor containment failing. The intercom blared. Students were evacuating, running toward safety, but one announcement made Daniel freeze. All personnel, manual override required to prevent meltdown. Without thinking, Daniel sprinted toward the labs. He had no plan, no special equipment, just determination and a sense of responsibility. Lyra watched from the stairwell, panic written across her delicate features. "Daniel, no!" she shouted, but he didn't stop. Her tail twitched anxiously, but then something inside her shifted. She had spent her life hiding, avoiding danger, and shrinking from the world. But she couldn't let him face this alone. Not Daniel, not after everything. She ran after him, her silver hair and tail trailing behind, moving with surprising speed and grace. When she reached the reactor room, Daniel was already there, examining the containment controls. Sparks flew from damaged panels and heat waves rippled across the floor. The situation was worse than he had imagined. "This is bad," he muttered under his breath, wiping sweat from his brow. Lyra stepped forward, her tail curling instinctively around her arm. "We can do this together," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. "Let me help." Daniel turned, surprised but relieved. "Are you sure? It's dangerous." "I'm sure," she said, her tail flicking confidently now, glowing faintly with her bioenergy. "I can handle the bio-current conduits. You handle the manual override." They worked in perfect synchronization. Daniel guided the panels, rerouting energy flows, while Lyra used her unique Vanyari abilities to stabilize the bioenergy surges. Sparks flew and alarms shrieked, but their teamwork was precise, almost instinctive. A sudden explosion shook the room, throwing Daniel to the floor. Pain shot through his side, and he gritted his teeth to stay conscious. Lyra was immediately at his side, her tail wrapping protectively around him. "Stay with me," she shouted, her hands glowing faint blue as she reinforced the energy field around them. Daniel looked at her amazed. You saved me," he gasped. "No," she said, voice trembling but resolute. "We saved each other." For what felt like hours, they fought the failing reactor together. Sparks flew, metal groaned, and the room shook, but they didn't give up. Step by step, panel by panel, surge by surge, they brought the system under control. Finally, with one last adjustment from Lyra, the reactor stabilized. The alarms ceased, and the lights returned to normal. Exhausted and covered in soot, Daniel and Lyra collapsed onto the floor, breathing heavily. Daniel reached out and held her hand. You were incredible," he whispered. "You too," she said, her voice soft, tears mingling with sweat. I didn't know I could do that." Daniel shook his head, smiling faintly. "You can do anything, Lyra. You just needed to believe in yourself, and let someone believe in you too." Her tail curled around his arm, resting gently. It wasn't hidden anymore. It shimmered under the lights of the repaired lab, proud and alive, just like her. For the first time, Lyra truly understood something profound. Courage wasn't just about standing in front of danger alone. It was about trusting someone, about taking a leap together, even when fear threatened to overwhelm you. And in that moment, she realized that Daniel had been her anchor all along. "You saved everyone," Daniel said, brushing soot from her hair. "No," she said softly, smiling despite exhaustion. "We saved everyone, together." And in that quiet moment, amidst the hum of the repaired reactor, Lyra felt something she had never felt before. Pure, unshakable confidence. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't shrinking. She was alive, she was brave, and she was ready to face whatever came next, side by side with Daniel. The twin suns would rise again soon, and this time, she would greet them without fear, her tail free, her heart unguarded, and her spirit unbroken. Weeks passed after the reactor incident, and life at the academy slowly returned to normal. But things had changed. The students who once whispered and stared now looked at Lyra with quiet respect. Stories of the human and Vanyari duo who had prevented a disaster spread quickly, and even the most skeptical teachers acknowledged her bravery. Lyra no longer felt the need to hide. Her silver tail moved freely behind her, shimmering faintly in the Academy's lights, a symbol of courage, trust, and pride. She walked tall, her shoulders lifted, and her eyes met the gaze of others without fear. For the first time, she felt fully herself. Daniel found her in the garden one afternoon, sitting on the edge of the fountain, her tail curling gently around her. The twin suns reflected in her silver hair, making it shine like threads of light. "You've changed," he said softly, smiling. She looked at him and laughed quietly. "No, you've just helped me see who I really am." Daniel knelt beside her, his hand brushing gently against hers. "You've always been amazing, Lyra. You just didn't know it yet." She hesitated, then let her tail flick gently, brushing his arm without fear. "I was so afraid," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid of being different, afraid of being judged, afraid of everything. And yet," Daniel said, smiling, "here you are, stronger than anyone I've ever met. You didn't let fear control you. You faced it. And you taught everyone around you a lesson they'll never forget." Lyra's eyes glistened with tears, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. For the first time, she truly understood what Daniel had said weeks ago. She was beautiful, not despite her tail, but because of it. It was part of her, alive and expressive, just like her spirit. "Do you really mean that?" she asked softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "I do," Daniel said firmly, meeting her gaze. "Your tail, it's beautiful. But more than that, you are beautiful. Brave, kind, strong, and alive. Ever forget that?" She let herself smile fully, a real smile that reached her eyes. Her tail wrapped gently around his wrist in a quiet gesture of trust and closeness. It was no longer a secret, no longer something to hide. It was a part of her story, her identity, her pride, her courage. Around them, the Academy continued its rhythm of study and training. But in that quiet moment, the world seemed to pause. Daniel and Lyra sat together side by side, connected not only by friendship but by shared experience. "Trust and understanding, you know," she said softly, leaning slightly toward him. "I never thought anyone would see me like this, and not run, not judge, just see me." Daniel smiled gently. "Some humans are like that," he said with a hint of humor in his voice. "But it's rare, and when you find one, you hold on." Lyra's tail swayed slowly in the evening breeze, a living ribbon of silver and blue, wrapping around his hand in quiet acknowledgement. She felt safe, seen, and most importantly, free. The twin suns began to set, casting a golden glow across the garden. Lyra stood, brushing her hands against her uniform, her tail curling naturally behind her. She looked at Daniel, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Come with me," she said quietly. "Let's walk, together." Daniel stood beside her, taking her hand gently. "Always," he said, his eyes warm with affection and admiration. As they walked through the garden, side by side, Lyra's tail swayed freely in the light, a symbol of all she had overcome: the fear, the hiding, the whispers, and the judgment. Now it represented something greater: courage, beauty, and the power of being seen for who you truly are. In that moment, under the twin suns, Daniel and Lyra knew that the future was theirs to face together. She didn't need to hide anymore. She didn't need to shrink. She was proud, alive, and free, and as they continued walking, the Academy around them buzzing softly with life, Lyra realized the truth she had never dared to believe before. Being different wasn't a weakness. It was the most beautiful part of all. Her tail glowed softly in the setting sun's light. And Daniel squeezed her hand, smiling. "You're perfect," he said simply. Lyra smiled back, her heart full, her tail swaying proudly. "And you helped me see that," she replied. And in that moment the world seemed to shine a little brighter, because someone had the courage to see beauty where others only saw difference.